chat. Who the hell is this guy? Hello?
Hey, how's it going, Chris?
Good, are you?
Sorry, I guess I'll be evil Chris for this
Oh,
conversation.
that's all right. That's all right. Well, it's, there's got to be evil Chris's sometimes. That's what I. No, I'm kidding. What's going on, man? You vote for Trump?
Yeah, I did. I'm a Republican, but I just want to say I've never been on like one of your lives before, but I just wanted to say that I'm only coming up because I think even though you disagree with a lot of the things that Trump and the Republicans are doing, you and I both share the same sort of love for country, you know, and I see that
Yeah.
you show Republicans a little bit of respect. So I just want to give you a shout out for that.
Well, I appreciate that a lot, man. I do genuinely. Yeah, I do. Like, it's I try. You know, sometimes I get angry, I get upset, I say shit I shouldn't say, but try to keep it calm, cool, collected, be passionate. So I appreciate the kind words, man.
No, we all do. And, you know, hopefully during this debate, I don't sound too much like an idiot. This is your full-time job. So,
No.
but I just wanted to start.
I
just want to start
mean,
and
it is totally fair. I'm like, yeah, I spend all my time like, you know, I don't expect everyone to be like a mega nerd like me. Continue though. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
But I'm wondering, why do you think we're in a constitutional crisis? Do you want to go first, or should I go first, or how do you want to do this?
Yeah. I'll just quickly like explain. Yeah, I think we're in constitutional crisis because Donald Trump is like ignoring federal judges and now the Supreme Court. And when the executive branch ignores a judicial branch, it's the definition of constitutional crisis. I think originally he's been doing this with like certain executive orders he signed around federal funding freezes. So he froze all federal funding. Judges ruled it was unconstitutional. Some of that federal funding is still frozen, and the judges have plainly written like the Trump administration is in plain violation of my court order. Doesn't matter. They're still just doing it. Similarly with SCOTUS, you know, they ruled 9-0 that they need to, the Trump administration needs to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia. The Trump administration claims, you know, like facilitate is, you know, that doesn't mean we have to. They're essentially, in my opinion, spitting in the face of the ruling itself. We had actually one of the most Republican judges in the country, appointed by Reagan, write a pretty scathing 6-page court order, similarly just saying like the Trump administration needs to follow through with the Supreme Court's order, and they still have not. Again, thus, like if the executive branch is enforcing laws that are illegal, the judicial branch is ruling they're illegal, but the executive branch is continuing to do it. It's the definition of constitutional crisis.
So I hear exactly what you're saying. Your main points are that we're in a constitutional crisis because of the way that Trump's been, you know, handling America, the judiciary, justices, rulings, that sort of thing. So what do you think how does the Trump administration even move forward with getting back Garcia? He can't tell another country to do something.
Well, here's the thing. We've brought 6 people back from El Salvador already. People who were like wrongly sent. And we've also brought, I mean, when we do this all the time, like people we claimed was undocumented to Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, and then proceeded to bring all of them back. I think that furthermore, like, you know, at the very least, the tariffs Donald Trump loves so much to pressure other countries to do things, he can't slap a giant tariff on El Salvador and say, bring him back now to be in, you know, with the court. I think as other federal judges have ruled, like it's facetious, you know, to claim for the Trump administration claim they can't. I think furthermore, the reason they haven't and the reason they're having this argument is because at this point, as I told the last guest, like he's a liability. He like they can't bring him back because if they bring him back, he gets to tell his story, and that's politically not advantageous for the Trump administration. So they're obviously very friendly with Bukele and the El Salvadorians, and so, you know, they will continue to tell the El Salvadorians not to let him
out. I see your point, but again, like the U.S. has no total control over any other country, and we can't just demand a country do something because our Supreme Court says it. There's no universal world law that says that we can do that. Okay, so I just think that that's like an impossible task.
But you would agree that like with Trump's relationships with the El Salvadorians and the fact that we have brought people back from El Salvador under the Trump administration already, that like he could obviously do it.
I don't think he could. The president of El Salvador, he said he wasn't going to smuggle in a terrorist in the U.S.
Yeah, I think that like again, I think that's just I would just really staunchly push back and say that like again, like even Harvey Wilkinson, who's appointed by Reagan, who really strongly believes in, executive power, wrote very, very plainly and cleanly, like, this is an egregious abuse of executive power, and for the functioning of our country, you need to bring him back. Because at this point, let's say hypothetically, he can't bring him back. SCOTUS is nonsense. The courts are nonsense. Then what? Have we set a precedent that here's the problem? Have we set a precedent that if the government picks you up tomorrow and sends you to another country to rot in a dungeon, and then they go to the courts and say, whoops, well, we accidentally sent Chris, but we can't do anything about it now, he's out of our jurisdiction. That seems like a pretty dangerous precedent to set. Like, there's got to be something that has to be done, right?
Well, to frame what I'm about to say, do you believe that every person that comes into the U.S. illegally or legally has access to the full constitutional sort of breadth of rights?
In general, yes.
Well, I don't think that every...
Go ahead.
There's lots of parts of the Constitution that don't apply to illegal immigrants. Like, they can't carry a firearm, they can't run for government until they're a U.S. citizen, they can't vote, things of that nature. So the Constitution doesn't apply fully to all people who enter the U.S. illegally. And if you look at what Trump did in February of 2025, what he did is he designated MS-13 gang as a terrorist organization. And that brings up a whole wide range of tools and tactics that the U.S. can use to fight terrorists. If you're designated a terrorist, things like the Patriot Act apply to you.
Sure.
And so the U.S. is allowed to swoop up terrorists and remove them from the country under the Patriot Act.
Sure. So two things. So you may be correct that certain things don't apply to undocumented immigrants, but undocumented people. But I'd argue that like the Supreme Court has made it very clear over and over again that like due process is one of those things that undocumented people are absolutely afforded. Like, that amendment calls for due process does not say U.S. citizens, it says all persons. And so that's the ruling, is that, like, I think, number one, undocumented people are absolutely afforded, and it's been proven over and over that they are afforded the rights of due process. Number two, again, if that is the argument, why did the Trump administration say that it was a clerical error? Like, this is one of the few like government issues we're debating while simultaneously all agreeing that it was wrong. Like, the government agrees that what they did was a mistake.
So you think that the U.S. should go to great lengths to protect a terrorist?
We don't have evidence that he's a terrorist. That's the problem.
Actually, sir, on March of 2019, he was arrested, and there was a gang field interview sheet done. And Correct. A gang field interview sheet is an actual form that the police fill out to categorize somebody as a gang member, and he met every requirement.
Correct. And so I have two questions. Number one, again, and if that's 2019, 6 years ago, I think our basic rights as people tell us that the government will arrest you and make a claim against you, and then you get to go cross-examine the government if you wish in front of a judge. And so I think it's facetious for any of us to say that he was a gang member when we're just going to flat out, like, again, the party of small government, the executive branch gets to just unilaterally rule who's a terrorist. That's where we're at in this country. Like, if they just rule that I'm a part of MS-13, they don't need to provide, because again, are you familiar with who filled out that informant sheet, or who filled out that sheet, that 2019 sheet?
Yeah, the police department did.
Right. No, but there's a specific informant who gave them information. He was an informant working in a gang unit at that time with that police department. When Abrigo Garcia's lawyer asked to speak to that person, that informant who filled out that sheet, he was told that the informant had been suspended and placed on leave. And so they were not able to talk to him. And they were like, the rest of the gang unit from 2019 does not want to speak with you. So again, like, there's no way we're at the point where the government can just make a claim against you with, frankly, no one gets to cross-examine them. No one gets to ask them questions. The people who filled out the sheet don't even exist. We don't know who they are. And then that's just it. There's no due process anymore. We just get to, just believe the government. That does not seem like a very small government thing.
I know it doesn't seem ideal, but Chris, if you look at what happened on 9/11, it created the Patriot Act that takes away the rights of terrorists in our country. And if you're branded as a terrorist to the federal government, you don't have the same rights. And that's my argument.
So then
And
why did
since
the
9/11, if you look at 3 of the pilots on 9/11, they were overstayed on visas. They were here illegally. People that are here illegally commit crime. They light people on fire. They grape.
Okay.
They do lots of bad things. They're part of gangs that decapitate people.
Wait. Two things. Number one, people here who are undocumented are far less likely to commit violent crimes than native-born U.S. citizens. That's been proven over and over again. I can pull up 2 studies, one from the state of Texas, done in cooperation with the DOJ, that shows that they're far less likely to commit violent crimes, and one done by 2 Ivy League professors analyzing ICE data over 54 years that again showed it actually almost with the same percentages that undocumented people were far less likely to commit violent crime compared to native-born U.S. citizens. So I'd argue that it's like it's perpetrating violence against people who are here who may not look like us to claim that they're all here doing just savage things because they can't live in our society, right? That's going to border on like racism. I think number 2. Again, this argument doesn't make sense in the same vein that the administration themselves is arguing that they didn't mean to do this. The administration themselves said, Caroline Leavitt said on a press conference, they've argued in front of multiple judges that it was a clerical error. They did not mean to do this. So is it that they're allowed to do it and they can do it to gang members they know are gang members because he's a terrorist? Or is it that they actually didn't mean to deport him to the one country that he fled from? Like, he can't be both.
Yeah, but why? What's the big draw to protect a non-documented
So that's my
illegal immigrant who's branded as a terrorist for being a part of an organization that decapitates people?
So Chris, what we've just done is we've pivoted off the main point, which is like why it's not. It's about principle. It's about principle of why the government says they didn't mean to do this. The government is admitting their wrongdoings. We have just argued about the realities of no due process and all of these things. And then it's just like when we clearly kind of agreed on that, or at least came to some type of understanding. And then it's like, well, it doesn't really matter anyway because he's a illegal gang. Like, who cares? It's like, no, again, this is like a really dangerous precedent to set. It's our laws. It's our Constitution. If we decide today that like, oh, it's fine to not give this one individual due process. It's fine if Trump, again, is currently ignoring the Supreme Court on this. Trump could just start sending whoever Trump said to Bukele that he was interested in sending, quote, homegrowns. So regular U.S. citizens are you telling me that it would be acceptable to you if Trump said he asked Pam Bondi about doing it to U.S. citizens who are criminals? Would it be acceptable to you if the Trump administration arrested somebody who was born in the United States, had a birth certificate, they said he was part of a gang, from an informant we don't know, and 2 days later that person was shipped to El Salvador and we never saw them again? Would that be acceptable to you? Because where do we start drawing the line?
I'm not going to try to defend something that I don't wholeheartedly believe in. And I think the healthy part of debates is conceding to certain facts. And so what I will concede to here is that federal judges have told Trump to return this person, that it was a mistake, and that it was unconstitutional to send him to another country. I concede to that fact, and I agree with those facts. But what I don't agree with is, radical progressives coming on TikTok and saying that there's a constitutional crisis because the Trump can't return someone into the United States. All the other federal judges, rulings that told the Trump administration not to deport people anymore that fall into that status, he's followed those guidelines to the T. He hasn't violated the Constitution in that. So I don't think there's an argument that there's a constitutional crisis because Trump just can't return somebody.
Okay, well, there is. Well, 2 things. Number 1, certainly not. I think there's people in my chat who are probably laughing because they wish I was further left. So certainly not a radical progressive, but certainly
okay, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. That was disrespectful. I didn't mean to.
It's fine. Certainly like a raging liberal, pragmatic progressive, maybe. Maybe I am a radical progressive. Well, depends how you define it. I'd be fine with that definition. I like radical progressive. Anyways, Yeah. So, but here's the problem: is like that's not. I you're agreeing. You are fundamentally agreeing to the idea that he's doing something deeply anti-constitutional. And the definition of constitutional crisis, you explain the definition of constitutional crisis and then said, well, it's fine because he's not doing it to other people. It hasn't become a massive problem. Like in my world, right? This is how like dictatorships and fascism come to be, is always through democratic means, always through like slowly pushing the envelope and abusing democratic means and consolidating power, right? Like there's never going to be an instance where never in history has somebody walked on a stage with a sticky note that says, I'm a dictator. And then everyone's like, oh my God, here's the evil bad guy. I think we're under this impression that when people like me say Trump is dictator-esque or Trump is pushing us to fascism, people are like, well, he hasn't started deporting all these other we haven't started doing all these other unconstitutional things, as if one day Donald Trump's going to do something so egregious that's going to cause you and I to go pick up arms together in like a movie scene. We're going to go fight the evil dictator. That's not how dictatorships work. Like the guy in Germany his party was democratically elected overwhelmingly. They appointed him. And then he said, I'm going to rip apart a few democratic norms because we have bad people here. We have communists here. Our economy has been ruined after World War I, and we need to get this under control. And so I'm just going to consolidate a little bit of power. And you know what the argument was then? Oh, that's great. He can finally get some shit done. We saw how that ended up, right? And so like, I just like did like the fundamental idea that it's like not bad enough. It's never going to be bad enough until it's way too late. That's how it's always worked.
So to understand your argument here, I got to ask you a question. What do you think the end game with Trump is then?
I think the end game.
Yeah, if you say that he's moving towards being a dictator, that's what you're in the nuance of this conversation.
Yeah,
so
sure.
what is this dictator trying to achieve?
I'm not sure. I think he desperately, I think we've always known Donald Trump to be someone who only cares about power, desperately wants power, and is generally narcissistic. He doesn't care about anybody but himself. He's shown that over and over and over again in his attempt to just continue to like expand executive authority and like push the envelope about what he can and can't do. I don't know. I don't know that he necessarily has an end goal. I think he might just enjoy having a bunch of power and pushing the envelope about what that power brings. I'm sure he's going to run for a third term.
Yeah, it says directly in the Constitution that you're not allowed to run for a third term. It literally says like.
I know. It also says in the Constitution it also says somewhere about like not trying to overthrow elections you didn't win without evidence you didn't win it. But again, I'd put money on the fact that in 3 years you'll be on a TikTok live arguing about the fact that you don't love that he's running for a third term, but because we did an amendment here or found a loophole here, like it's within the Constitution, so it's fine. Again, like Steve Bannon has mentioned this now 2 or 3 times that they're working on the clause to make sure he can run in 2028. And obviously Steve Bannon was the reason Trump got elected in 2016 and was, his guy until 2020. Like that's his entire playbook comes from Steve Bannon himself. And when Steve Bannon says stuff like that, people don't take it seriously, but he's a very smart individual. And it's like, I think it's, maybe he won't run for a third term. I think it's naive as hell to believe that the guy who was facing 500 years in federal prison because he tried every single legal and illegal method to overthrow a democratic election is all of a sudden after this term going to say, "Oh, it's fine. I'm good now. Let's do the peaceful transfer power thing." That sounds naive. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I see the way that you're framing Trump, and the way that I frame Trump is I just want to first preface this by saying, like I'm a Republican. I studied political science in college, worked for a member of the Senate, did all these things on behalf of Republicans. And there is a meter that I have, an internal meter, and I won't bore anyone here by sharing it, but it's basically, if an elected official does X, Y, Z, I'm not willing to support them anymore. And I just don't think Trump has met that qualification.
Really?
Like if he did all the things that you said he was going to do, then I would totally be there. I would be outside with a bands off our bodies t-shirt supporting feminist movement rights, and I would be voting for a Democrat. But I just don't think he hasn't done any of that stuff yet. It sounds like you're
him trying to overthrow the 2020 election. That wasn't
okay. But I think what a lot of people do is they give the executive too much power in their minds. Like, sure, the president has a very excited way that he goes about doing things, and the checks and balances and the three branches of government stop him from completely overthrowing something.
Wait, pause right there. Let me ask you a question. If Donald Trump signs an executive order tomorrow that says everyone named Chris has to go to federal prison, you and I, and the judicial branch, a federal judge, immediately rules that's unconstitutional. You cannot do that. Obviously, it violates this, this, and this. What's stopping the Trump administration from doing it?
Because they're only the executive. They're not the judicial.
So, and the executive enforces the law.
And they don't have the enforcement. Like, sure, Donald Trump is the head of the Department of Justice in a way, but there's a head of the Department of Justice who blocks them from doing unconstitutional things.
And who's the head of the Department of Justice?
Attorney General?
Yes.
Yeah.
Bond.
And federal judges.
Yeah. No. I need you to hear my words. Donald Trump signs an executive order. The judge says it's unconstitutional. Donald Trump heads the executive branch and enforces the law. What is stopping the executive branch from just enforcing the law anyway?
That the AG has control over the FBI, which is in the judicial.
So stop. No. The AG, the DOJ, the FBI, that's all executive. So let's assume for a second that the people in those agencies, those executives, who right now seem pretty loyal to Trump, let's just say that they're accepting of the willingness to. Let's act as if the executive branch was all one for a second. That everybody in the executive, Trump, his attorney general, Pete Hegseth, the director of the FBI, all of these people are acting as one at Trump's direction. So I'll ask the question again. If Trump signs an executive order saying all Chris's who go to federal prison, all people named Chris have to go to federal prison, and a judge rules it's unconstitutional, what is stopping the executive branch from enforcing that law?
Well, number one, I would send you a $100 donation on PayPal, and then I'd become a Democrat if that happened. But everything that you're talking about is what if, and it almost sounds delusional. None of this is happening.
No. It is what if.
None of this is happening, Chris.
It isn't, but I'm going to explain why it's not delusional, because something you just said is a fundamental misunderstanding of how our government works. You said Trump 2020, but our checks and balances stop him from doing that. So I'm trying to have a conversation with you about how our country works with checks and balances. So if Donald Trump signs an executive order and it's deemed illegal by the courts, and the executive branch says, we're just going to enforce the law anyway, what is stopping them from doing that? Nothing, correct, right? So the only thing judges do and the judicial branch does is slide over a piece of paper. That's it. They have no enforcement mechanism. The only reason it works is because we all respect it. Because when they do something and they need an enforcement mechanism, the executive branch is the enforcement mechanism because they enforce the law. If the Supreme Court holds someone in contempt of court and arrests them, who do they call on to arrest that person? The U.S. Marshal Service. And the U.S. Marshal Service is under the DOJ, which is under the executive. So again, in this conversation of how checks and balances work, this is why it's constitutional crisis, because the judiciary has no enforcement mechanism. So if the executive is all acting as one and not listening, then they can just start doing super illegal things like we're talking about right now. They're not bringing home one man. The courts say bring him home, and the executive all together, the DOJ, Pam Bondi, those people you're talking about, they're all in the Oval Office saying we can't bring him back. We're not going to listen to the Supreme Court. The definition of constitutional crisis. Similarly to 2020, you said, well, there's people in our checks and balances that stop him. 40 of his 44 hand-selected cabinet members from his first term didn't endorse him. They all said this guy is dictator-like, doesn't care about the Constitution. He asked me to put himself over the Constitution, and I refused to do it. So we elected him again, but this time he selected a bunch of people who are purely loyal to him. And so that's the danger that we, like people like me, keep yelling about it. You understand, when we have this transcript and the testimony from this, in 2020, Donald Trump tried to pressure the Department of Justice to release a letter to the American public saying that there was voter fraud. So and think about this for a second. The DOJ releases this letter to the American public saying we have evidence of mass voter fraud. That would be a big deal, right? That would go a long way. At that time, if I heard that, I might believe there's voter fraud. I'd like to believe the DOJ is independent of political pressure. And when Donald Trump did that, 2 DOJ officials were in the room with him in the Oval Office during this time and said, "We're not going to do it. We refuse." And Donald Trump said, "Do it," and they resigned over it. So now imagine this scenario where we've elected the guy again. All the people who tried to stop him in this hypothetical, these checks and balances, people try to stop the bad dictator. We've elected him again, and he's replaced all those people. So next time that happens, the 2 people in the room are not going to be people who care more about the Constitution than Trump. They're going to be loyal to Trump because we elected him again. And so that whole scenario in 2020 could play out again with 2 different people, and we'd be in a way different world right now. So you're making essentially my argument for me.
No, respectfully, Chris, I mean this respectfully. If you worked in actual reality on what's happening on the ground, you are focused more about the future and what could happen than what's actually happening right now. And I think your fundamental
that's usually
your
because
fundamental flaw is that you don't understand how government works properly. The judicial is in charge of the FBI and everything.
The judicial is in charge. My brother in Christ.
Yes, they are. Look it up. Look at any poli-science book, dude. I'm telling you, the judicial is in charge. The attorney general is in charge of the FBI. It's true. They're in charge of the FBI, Chris. You just have a fundamental misunderstanding
can I ask you a question?
that linchpins your argument into non-existence.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Is the FBI okay? What branch?
They're a part of the judicial branch. Yes.
What branch is the Department of Justice under?
The DOJ is under the judicial.
So what makes up the executive branch?
The office of the president and his cabinet advisors.
Okay. Fantastic. So how is Donald Trump, if the DOJ is part of the judicial branch, how did Donald Trump appoint?
It is.
Okay. How did Donald Trump appoint the director of the DOJ?
Oh, well, that's simple. The Constitution says that the executive gets to do that.
Oh my God.
Dude, ChatGPT, buddy. ChatGPT, pull them out. Be like, is the FBI under the DOJ or the executive? Just ask that question. ChatGPT is going to square you up. Maybe use Grok. I think Grok is better. Go Elon Musk.
Okay, you know what? How about that? How about this? We're gonna teach
do
you.
Grok.
Yeah, I'm doing it. Okay.
All right.
What do you want, guys? Chat. This is the most insane shit I've ever heard in my entire life. What do you want me to ask?
Ask: is the DOJ or the executive branch in
the
control
DOJ,
of the FBI?
Is the DOJ under the executive branch? How about that?
No. Just ask this. Just plain poli-sci 101 terms. Is the judicial branch in charge of the FBI?
Is the
judicial branch in charge of the FBI?
Okay. Branch in
You're
charge.
Going to see.
Okay. Fantastic. Send. Grok. Here we
Show me the result. Let's see it.
Quote, I'm gonna show you the result in a second, but I'm gonna read it first. Quote, no, the judicial branch is not in charge of the FBI. The FBI is part of the executive branch, specifically under the Department of Justice, which is led by the Attorney General, a presidential appointee. The judicial branch, which includes courts like the Supreme Court, interprets laws and oversees legal disputes, but has no direct authority over the FBI.
God damn, I was wrong. I'm sorry. I haven't opened up a poli-sci book in years.
Yeah. You.
I really thought the DOJ was under the Justice.
No.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I concede.
It's okay. Yeah, every 3-letter agency is under so the executive branch is made up of the president, his cabinet, and then essentially like every 3-letter agency. So like the DOJ, the FBI, the CDC, the SEC, the FDA, the fucking EPA. There's a couple more than 3-letter, but just in general, 3-letter agencies that's all part of the executive branch. And so this what I'm talking about here is like, again, those agencies like the DOJ are supposed to be largely independent from political pressure and the president. But what we've seen now, because we elected a guy who, for the first time ever, fired all these civil servants, these federal employees, and is replacing them with loyalists. You see where we're going with this? So now that same concept you brought up in 2020, where the DO, like, oh, it's fine because like checks and balances, people stop Trump from doing bad things. Like the executive, you were saying, you literally said, like the executive, our checks and balances would stop him from doing that. Well, we elected a guy who's now put a bunch of loyalists in the executive. And so my fear has always been, I've been screaming for since a year before the election, hey, we're running into a scenario where if Donald Trump appoints loyalists to the entire executive branch, we could end up in a scenario where he's like doing things illegally and ignoring the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, I was incredibly correct because that's exactly what's happening right now. And it's setting a really, really dangerous precedent. It was also the exact playbook, step by step, of Project 2025, which we all tried to scream about, but it was whatever.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I really thought that the FBI was under the DOJ for some reason.
It's okay. The FBI is under the DOJ. It's just that the DOJ is part of the executive branch.
Yes. So I see my misrepresentation was where the power lies. So the power lies from the executive to tell the FBI what to do,
Correct.
even though they're in the DOJ.
Correct.
Correct. I must have failed that part of the test.
That's you know what? That's
I guess it's not so funny because we're talking about serious stuff. But
well, it's okay. I mean, I haven't graduated college. And whenever I go back, I'm going to be on academic probation because my GPA is. I'll tell you one thing, brother. It probably doesn't start with a 2. It probably doesn't. So that tells you about where we're at. It's never the best school student myself.
Yeah, but if you look at your intelligence, I don't think you're fit for a classroom, man. Like, you're able to access like the whole parts of your brain when you debate, and it's pretty impressive to watch. So it's like you have skill that's not seen in books. So yeah, I mean, I got respect for what you do. You're smart. You're smarter and faster than I am at it. That's for sure.
Don't discredit yourself. I do appreciate the kind words. That like genuinely, it means a lot. It does.
No, but in my book, I think Republicans and Democrats are supposed to work together. I know that Dems think that some of the things Trump has done are so egregious that we can't be friends. But like, if you go to like a Congress, like if you go to a congressional meeting, when I worked for a senator in Arizona, he used to have meetings with Democrats and Republicans, and they would be like laughing, shaking hands, friendly with each other. But I think that politics has gotten really polarized. But that's the only reason that I've ever gone on one debate TikTok is yours, is because I think that that you actually are like level-headed and like it's okay to concede. Like, I'm not going to be right all the time.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think like obviously this time in American history is insane, but the hope is that one day it can be less polarizing. And I will also say that it's good to. I appreciate you like conceding because I also am not right. There's probably several things in there. I always tell people like make sure you're. I know people like the like TikTok debates and people like watching politics on TikTok, but I always tell people like please double, triple check your sources because these are complicated things and don't know. But listen, Chris, let me. It's already almost 1 p.m. for me, so I'm gonna have to end off soon. But let me cycle a few.
Oh yeah, I've been on here for a while. I was gonna go because you gave me some new things to think about.
No, for sure. I'd love to talk.
But really, I'm gonna think about have that power dynamic now.
For sure.
Because you brought it up, so I really got to think about that. I'm not going to debate anymore of something that I'm just learning about.
No, totally fair. And listen, like I'm more than happy to like talk again soon about whatever. I appreciate you being respectful, man.
All right, have a good one, Chris. I hope the best for you.
Thanks, man. You too. Have a good week. All right. Thanks, Chris. Shout out to that guy. You know what? I won't lie. Most of the time, like you got to admit, Chad. Most of the time, it's like we get into a situation like that, or it's like I'm going to say what's part of the executive branch. It's like I thought he was going to double down, but he was like, no. Okay. It was refreshing. That's right, Carrie. That was nice. That was chill. Right. Exactly, Chad. This is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about, Chad. You again, like. Not everybody who voted for Trump is MAGA. Actually, well, that's not true. Let me rephrase that. Everyone who voted for Trump is MAGA. Not everyone who's MAGA is like MAGA. You know what I mean? And like, it's situations like that where I'm like, we're getting there. It is rare. No, I'm not saying it's not rare. I'm just saying, bro, I'm trying to win, chat. Okay? People get mad at me sometimes. They're like, oh, you're too nice. I want to win, bro. I want to fucking win, please. I want to win. I don't know, dude. I try different methods every day. Sometimes I crash the fuck out. I obviously have a lot of energy. I'm very passionate. I fucking scream at people. You see my last few videos. I'm like, you stupid fucks. I'm not fucking. I mean, sometimes I try to be calm, cool. I respect it. Well, yeah. The other thing too is like, again, I've gotten to this point where it's like, okay, I talk to other people on this often. Even in person, I do this. When I talk to people in person, there will be certain people that I talk to who like I will purposely concede on points that I would normally not concede, but I just won't argue points because like The answer is that like we're so divided that some people just like haven't met a Democrat ever, which is insane. But they just think that like I'm like not a real person. So like if I can like talk to a human being at like a bar and like before we get to politics, I'm like cool. And then we start talking about politics and I just like lay off. I'm like, all right, he's gonna say some crazy shit here. Be cool. It usually ends with like, damn, bro, like you're a Democrat, but you're like a cool ass dude, bro. Let's hang out again, or who, whatever the situation may be. And it's like, you've planted the seed. You've planted the seed. Just saying. Someone said politics in the bar, question mark. My brother, every single time I go to a bar, I end up talking about politics. Every time. I was literally at a bar Saturday night. My night ended from 1 a.m. to like 1:30 in a conversation just talking to a woman who voted for Trump. College educated, 30 years old, an accountant. And for that demographic, statistically, pretty rare. I just wanted to understand. So I literally sat there and I just kept asking her questions about why she did it, where she grew up, what her parents believed in, just out of curiosity. And then I was like, okay, so what are the reasons? And she told me stuff that was like objectively false. But I was like, I'm going to keep, I don't want to say, I just want to keep asking. So I was like, I just listened. And I was like, all right, have a good night. And then I left. Sometimes I end up screaming at people, you know? Sometimes like I literally, like people are like, it was like 2 weekends ago that like, I don't know, some people are just like weird, you know? Like Trump supporters especially are like really like, you know, the insecurity like reeks off them. So like it was like 2 weekends ago, some dude tried to like physically fight me. And I looked at him, I was like, you're a grown ass man, bro. Like, relax. Okay. I literally told him. He was like, I was like trying to talk to him and like the debate got heated and then he like cut it off. He was like, I don't really want to like, or he didn't really cut it. He just stopped like engaging. And then he was like, just kind of randomly was just like, you want to get knocked out? And I literally looked at him and I was like, I put my hand like this and I was like, bro, you're a grown ass man. This is probably a mistake. I was like, you're a grown ass man. Bro, you're not a kid. You don't need to act like this. And he got more upset. Obviously, that was dumb. But then what I ended up telling him was, I was like, bro, it's not worth it. I was like, we're both drunk out here. If you hit me, you're going to get arrested. And then you're going to wake up tomorrow with a charge. I was like, you're young. You're 22. Like, you don't need, that's going to be a whole thing. Like, come on, bro. Don't be dumb. Eventually, he like walked away, which was good. But I also told him straight up, because I was like, you know, the thing I hate the most about going out in situations like that is dudes who like want to fight but can't fight. See, I can't fight. Molly, great to see you. W's in the chat for Molly. See, I can't fight, but it's fine because I know I can't fight. So when I'm like, if I'm out at night, I'm not going to act like I can fight. I'm going to be aware, even if I'm upset or maybe not in the right state of mind. I'm not going to try to pick a fight. Like, you know, those dudes, this happens to me all the time when I'm out, specifically about politics. Like that guy who I debated, it's just like that dude can't fight either. That dude cannot fight. The only reason he's trying to fight me is because he like wants to feel good and he's like intoxicated. That's like embarrassing. I'm like, bro, you know what's going to happen right now? You can't fight and I can't fight, which means you're going to hit me first. I'm probably going to fall or something. And then you're going to get arrested. What's the point of that? Like, stop it. You're so cringe, bro. I was like, you're cringe. At least if you can fight and you want to fight, it's like, okay, I respect it. But I was like, you cannot fight me. You can't fight, bro. Look at you. Damn, bro. Like, look at yourself. Like, you know, I mean, I could defend myself. I'm not like a small guy. I'm not going to like get like picked up and like not like that. I'm just saying like, that kind of sounded like off, but you know what? Like I'm just saying I can't fight. I'm not gonna act like I can fight. That's all.